we'll start with session 3 of Go Luck Yourself. So again, I want to, big thank you for you to coming along for this session and sticking with it so far. We're now at session 3 out of a total of 6, so we're about halfway through. In terms of a reminder where we're up to, and just checking in with you in terms of how you've gone with it so far. Last session we looked at something called the good luck mindset. We sort of introduced that. And hopefully you're continuing to just notice the kinds of events which are influenced by luck, both big and small. That comes from session 1 about embracing luck. Hopefully that's something that will continue throughout the programme. Come on in, yeah. And that was also linked to this idea of gratitude and forming that as part of the good luck mindset. Hopefully you're regularly finding a way of noticing the events or things for which you're grateful. Again, they could be the small things, they could be something which are quite large events. And just doing it on some kind of regular basis. It could be every day, it could be once a week, a few times a week, whatever works for you. And again, it'd be useful to see how you get on with that in terms of, is it something you try daily, is it something you do once a week? That's what we want to encourage. And then we also talked a little bit about optimism, finding ways to cultivate an optimistic outlook. And in essence, that was about trying to have a gentle, positive expectation that events over which there's some degree of uncertainty will work out in your favour. And again, to kind of record how that's gone. So that's where we're up to session 2. And a reminder again about the luck journal for both you folks here and online. Any way in which you can keep that. If you have a hard copy journal, please use that. If you're writing it in some other place, that's fine. Doing it online is great. Any of these places is useful, and doing it as often as you reasonably can. Anything that happens that you think is relevant is something to put back into that luck journal. Which brings us to session 3, which I'm calling Opportunity Knocks. So the focus here is about how we notice opportunities, and following on from that, what we can do to help create those kinds of opportunities. So it builds upon the good luck mindset. It kind of extends that in some way, as we'll see. In terms of noticing opportunities, looking at certain aspects of psychology we could draw upon that might help us to notice opportunities and recognise them as such. And then, briefly, a little bit about what we can do to perhaps help create those kinds of opportunities. So I'd see those as 2 slightly different things, but related to each other. Is that okay? So for the next bit, I want you to try, I'm going to show you a clip. So if you're watching online, it's going to pause. And then you might want to pause itself, so it gives you time to watch the clip. And the clip is available on Blackboard. And you'll find that easier to watch than trying to watch it on this presentation and seeing it on the screen. So for these folks in the room, I'm going to show you that now. And to here. So before I kind of go on with this, the facts, do you see the gorilla? Okay, which is a nice relief from my perspective. Dan, I know, has seen it before.
That's good for me, because when you did it before, I didn't see the gorilla. And this time I thought maybe some trickery. So I watched it this time, not counting, and I did see the gorilla.
Yeah.
And it is
quite... It's selective attention, isn't it? We're asked to focus on the white, so we're going to miss other things. So.
Exactly. And it's the trouble with that clip as well, they called it a selective attention. It's because a bit like Dan, I've seen it several times now. I watch it thinking, how can people miss it? First time I saw it, no way of seeing it, because obviously we're focusing on the counting the passes. There are a few different versions of it, and that's the original one. So a lot of Darren Brown stuff, Saint and others have kind of essentially taken that and worked with it. So I'm relieved and pleased that it had the desired effect. So the fact that you didn't see the gorilla isn't anything like, oh, well, what was I not doing? Because that's what we often do. So that's what I'm going to carry on with now. And in that clip illustrates something called inattentional blindness. That when we focus our attention on something, then we are very much not attending to other things going on around us, even if it's quite a striking event. So I want to draw upon that kind of idea to illustrate that so far, and why it's relevant to what we're doing here, or I believe it might be relevant. So I would say there are opportunities around us all the time, but we simply don't notice them. So there are things going on around us which could be the source of luck experiences, but we don't notice they're going on. Because often we are focused on the task in hand. We've got a clear focus, and that's where our attention is. So we might not see them, we simply don't notice them, and that video clip, I think, illustrates that we can often not see things that are, in quotes, right in front of our eyes, because we're not attending to them. In terms of opportunities, well, we might notice something, but we don't recognise them as being opportunities. So maybe there's ways in which we can broaden that notion. And of course, even if we do see them, recognise them as being possibly relevant, we might not act upon them. So again, can we draw upon psychology to help us find ways in which we can do that? So that's why I think this idea could be relevant in terms of luck experiences. So how could psychology help us with that? I feel as though what's happening, of course, is we are focusing our attention. It's quite a narrow attention on things when we need to get them done, like in this case, counting the number of passes. It was quite a specific task. We all did it quite well. Wasn't able to follow them all. Quite a difficult task, but we were focusing our attention on it. And therefore we're missing those kinds of opportunities around us. So often when we are engaged in a work situation, we might be focused on something and not notice something else happening around us. So this is where I think about ways in which we can perhaps broaden our focus of attention. One of the first ways is thinking about positive emotions. So this is how I feel as though it might help extend and build upon the good luck mindset. If you remember, I mentioned there that gratitude, one possible consequence of gratitude, it can create positive emotions, and that can help us have a more broadened focus of attention, because we're relaxed a little bit more, and it can relate to a more relaxed attitude. We're not quite focused on getting the task done. We can believe that actually there are other things that could be happening around us. There could be different ways of achieving what we're trying to do. So having a more open attitude. And it's about seeing the bigger picture. Often when we are focused on the task in hand, we don't see the bigger picture. We're not aware of some of the things going on around us. And one way to illustrate that is from some psychological research, which just illustrates how we can perceive things differently. So for example, it looks like a classic psychology experiment. Imagine you are being shown this top image. So I'm trying to describe it too much with words. I don't want to give you too much because I want you to form it in your own head. So there's an image up here which is the target image. So that's the one that's the target image up here. And then you're presented with two separate images. So this one here and this one here. And your task will be to decide which of those two is most similar to the one at the top. Does that make sense? And there isn't a correct answer, but it's a way of assessing kind of which aspect you're focusing. So any thoughts in terms of, would you say this one is more similar? So the show of hands there. This one being more similar? Not caring either way is also a reasonable answer.
Depends whether you're looking at the shape or how many there are.
Well, your initial feeling, if someone said to you, choose which of these is most similar, which one would you go with?
Left.
Okay, with this one here?
Yeah, I'd go left.
Okay, probably, okay. And you tend to find out, and I think in the end, actually, that's what the bias has been towards. Because there, I would suggest that you are focusing on the fact that you've got three things there, and there's three things up there. The overall shape is one of a triangle, and the overall shape there is one of a triangle. Whereas over here, and some people might say, actually, I do see there's obviously similarities there, because here that's made up of triangles, and this is made up of triangles. And recently I showed it to a group of people, and they were saying also one similarity is in this one, we have an upside down triangle shape almost inside, the same as up here. So there are similarities between those two, as there are similarities between those two. Again, all very interesting. You know, what's that got to do with luck? What's that got to do with seeing the bigger picture? Well, some research in psychology has suggested that the more positive emotions tend to be, when people have been induced into having a positive emotion in an experimental context, they are more likely not always, but more likely to see the kind of bigger picture. It's what's called a global bias, as in you're thinking, well, this is more similar to this because overall it's a similar shape. Whereas over here, you're looking at the separate parts. And there seems to be a relationship between positive emotions and that global bias. So to me, it's this idea of by seeing the bigger picture, you're more likely to see connections between things, perhaps notice coincidences and so on. So it's taken that quite abstract idea and seen if that can apply in terms of looking at your life in general. So one thing I'll ask you to do over this next couple of weeks is to stand back and try to look at the bigger picture, try to have a more relaxed and open attitude, again attend to those kinds of positive emotions which may come about from recording your gratitude, and does that help you spot connections that you might not always see? So that's one part of it. A second part of the noticing opportunities is something called, or I'm relating to this, is something called mindfulness. Now mindfulness is quite a now well-researched topic within psychology, and increasingly it's a term I think even outside of psychology people are familiar with it. In terms of introducing the basic idea, there's huge amounts written about the topic, but one way of thinking about it, it's about remembering to be present, remembering to bring your attention back to the present moment. Because much of the time we spend a lot of our thinking either in the future, anticipating things that are going to come, planning ahead, worrying or concerned about what will happen in an hour's time, a day's time, or in a week's time, or ruminating over things that were already happened in the past. It's something we do quite commonly. And what mindfulness is trying to encourage us to do is to remember to actually keep our awareness as much as we're able to on the present moment. So certain aspects that are relevant here would be having a curiosity, an openness, an acceptance of the present moment experience. And that's actually often quite a difficult thing to do. And there's research that suggests that practices based around mindfulness have been shown to relieve stress, pain, anxiety. So they've often been used in a way that they can help as an approach, as almost like a therapeutic approach to these kinds of things. So it has an impact upon people's well-being. And what I'd like to explore then is mindfulness-based practices also impact upon luck experiences. By bringing our attention to the present moment, being more aware of what's happening around us as it happens, and doing that in a non-judgmental, accepting way, can that help us to be more aware of those kinds of opportunities that are happening around us? To illustrate it, and I'm hoping you'll try this with me, and we have some resources that are provided by the university to help with this. Now I'm not convinced that link's going to work, so I'm going to go straight to here. But the link it will be provided on the website, and again, if it's sort of showing on here, I suppose, it's this link here. So that link would have taken me straight through to the website. The link itself will be on Blackboard, so you can check any of these resources. They're produced by someone called Anna Sorensen, who, she described herself on the audio as a counsellor here at the university. She's sadly not with us here at the university anymore, she's doing other work. But she produced these materials, and they're all quite short files, and I want to just allow us some time to listen to one of them to get a sense of what those practices involve, and allow us in this session to actually take a moment to pause and bring our attention in a more mindful way.